We built a reef tank. Now let's go and let's test this thing out. Thank you for tuning in to our update on this simple reef that we put together in the last episode that we did. This is a very inexpensive build done in a 10-gallon tank. Its intentions are for those that want to dabble in reefing and see if it's for them, something that they would be interested in continuing with, or someone who just wants to have a simple fish tank that's a little bit more pretty than just the typical freshwater that you might see. Today's plan is to test the water, and I'll show you how I do it. Now, there are all sorts of testing kits that you can purchase. Saliford is popular, same with Red Sea test kits. But I've learned that for ammonia and nitrite, the simple API test kits from like Petco work very well, easily accessible, and fairly cheap. Now, these test kits from Petco are a 2-part test kit that comes with a 5 milliliter test tube. Now, it is a 2-part mixture. There's part 1 and there's part 2. When these combine with the salt water, it will show us the amount of ammonia, nitrite, whatever you're testing for. And what you're shooting for is 0 parts per million, or ppm. Now, if you look down here, there's actually some corals you can see there. There's zoas, and they're growing. There's also some mushrooms, so those just came in on the rock. That's kind of a cool thing with live rock, that it's going to have stuff growing on it. So I believe these down here are armor of god pallies, and also possibly some fire goblins. These mushrooms here are like a peachy red Recordia. They usually look pretty good under the blue actinic lights. This light you see on is an LED light bulb that I was telling you about in the last episode. You purchase them off Amazon and they're like 25, 30 bucks. So I threw that on and it's actually growing stuff. As you can see, it's obviously growing the coral. So with our 5 milliliter test tube here, glass tube, we are going to bring the water here to this line. Now that line is 5 milliliters. You can see it there. Sometimes it rubs off, but this one here I think you might be able to see on camera. Now, I like to use one of these plastic pipettes here to fill it up, just because sometimes it's it's difficult. Hello. All right, so with this pipette here, we'll just get some water and we'll fill that up to the line. Get a little bit more water. I think you can usually get these at like the dollar store, or probably a pharmacy would carry them. Okay. And then we have our ammonia, part 1 of the test. Now here it says that it requires 8 drops, uniform drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, I like to wait 10 seconds, and I don't shake. What I do is I rotate it slowly, as you can see me doing here. If you shake it, a lot of the moisture will actually come out of the top of the vial. It's not actually waterproof, so if you shake it hard enough, you'll actually lose some of your test solution. Okay, so now we're ready for part 2 of this test. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's all we need there. Now you can already see the color changing into this kind of greenish yellow lime color. Now we have to wait 5 minutes for that color change to be accurate. And you can see here, it like straight up matches the color on the test card there at 0 parts per million. So we are good. The second part that you have to make sure you test for is nitrite. Now it starts out with ammonia, well, an organic source actually, and that's going to break down and get turned into ammonia. nitrifying bacteria grow that turn ammonia into nitrite. Now, ammonia and nitrite are both very toxic and poisonous to your livestock, your fish, your coral, anything in the tank. Now, you need to be testing at 0 parts per million of both ammonia and nitrite to ensure a safe environment for your animals. Nitrite eventually will then get turned into nitrate and then nitrogen gas. Those are nothing to worry about. But if you do get an incredibly high amount of nitrate, you do need to do water changes of about 10 to 25%. But make sure that's the highest you go. If you do larger water changes than that, then you are risking removing too much of your beneficial bacteria, and that can cause ammonia outbreaks. It can cause nitrite to rise, which causes cloudy water and obviously will poison your animals. So make sure you're careful with doing too big of water changes. And if you ever do a 100%, you're probably asking for trouble. The API nitrite test kit only comes with one test solution, just one chemical, and you add 5 drops this time. They do recommend that you hold the bottle at the same angle. That's to ensure that you have uniform sized drops. And 5 drops there into our 5 milliliters of salt water from the Reef tank. We'll put our cap back on there, but instead of shaking it violently, we are going to rock it gently. That way we don't make a mess. We'll just do that for 10 seconds. Now, we do have to wait 5 minutes for the true color change, and then we'll be able to see what level of nitrite we have present in the Reef tank. We are shooting for 0 parts per million. A couple things while we're waiting on that to come through for us. Notice all this algae growing on the rock that wasn't here before. There's particularly a brown, dusty looking algae growing on the sand and on some of the rock. That is known as diatoms. Diatoms are a completely natural algae to have in a reef tank, and they love new tanks. They love to take over, and that is because there is so much nutritional value that's leaching out from that rock and that sand that's helping it grow. Now, once other organisms start to develop and the tank matures, those things will compete for that food source and eventually cause those diatoms to die back, and you won't have as much of it. Now, algae is one of those things that causes people to leave this hobby. It's Mother Nature's way of ensuring good water quality, really. So if you start getting algae here and there, don't freak out. Just let it continue to mature and grow. If it's something that you can grab with your fingers or tweezers, just pull it out physically. Killing it with chemicals or water changes causes it to melt and break back down into your water. And then all of a sudden you have a ton of food resource for new algae to grow. So physically removing it until it stops growing is going to be the best way. And you can actually gauge how much nutrition you pulled out of the water by how much algae you just removed physically. So comparing colors best we can probably see that nitrate color that we have there pretty well matches this color there, right there, which is going to signify 0 nitrite. You see this right there, that color. Okay, so now I'm only going to do a 1 gallon water change. We're just going to put that in a bucket. We're going to use our trusty vacuum. See this here? Nothing special about it. Now I'm going to teach you something that a lot of people don't know how to do. You should almost never be using your mouth to create a siphon, to create suction here for siphoning out the water. Let me show you. So this end needs to go in wherever your reservoir for the dirty water is going to be, whether that's a bucket or something like that. We're going to completely submerge the tube, okay? Make sure that this end is down, and then you lift. And you lift until you see that water begin to fall down. See how gravity's pulling it? And then before it gets to the end, before it gets to here, you resubmerge it. And it's going to continue your siphon. So right now, my siphon is continuing and it's draining the water. And I didn't use my mouth, nothing disgusting. So don't do that. That's just silly. This is a much better idea. Much better way. So remember, you lift it up completely out. As soon as the water starts to run down the tube into the hose, before it gets to the end, you have to resubmerge it. If any air hits the end, it breaks the siphon and it's done. You have to start over. So you can see the level dropping there as we pull the water. And we're going to replace it with some freshly mixed salt water. Now the whole cycle, all I used was just this filter. You'll read that you need to replace that filter pad every month. In this case, during your first water change, I would probably leave it because a lot of your bacteria will be living in that filter cartridge. Also, your filter really shouldn't have gathered much organic material or anything out of the water anyways, because there was nothing in there. Now, since the tank was good and ready to go, obviously we want to put some fish in there. During the cycling process, I've been quarantining these fish. I used cupramine, which is a copper-based medication for killing ick and other parasites, and then also used some bacterial infection medications just to make sure that the fish were clean. With fish, you also got to add coral to make it a reef. I would normally say this is a bit early for coral, but since the tank is doing so well, I'm going to give it a try. And I also have some disposable pieces for my frag tank that I sell from, so we'll give it a test. Now, if you're going to spend money on coral, I would make sure that you are purchasing just the cheapest stuff you can find. Something like Palithoa, zoanthids, mushrooms, xenia, something like that would be great. Some of those that I just listed can be very invasive species, though, so make sure that they have their own dedicated rock that is isolated so that they can't just grow and cover everything and become the one coral in your tank, the one coral that owns all. Xenia and green star polyps are popular because they're cheap and they are easy to keep, but they also take over everything. So I almost consider them an expert level coral. Here we're adding some rainbow montipora. There's a flower petal montipora in there as well. Some pink pallies I put down there next to the armor of God. And then this one up here at top is going to be a red digitata. And we'll see how these guys do. This is a bit of experiment for me as well. This one here is just a little leather. I'm going to take that rubber band off. I use that to hold it on for it to attach. Now, funny enough, this is actually a bit of a test run for me as well. Kind of an experiment with these corals. I want to see in a fresh tank like this which corals are actually going to stand up to the conditions here, since the tank is not exactly mature. I mean, most people don't even consider a tank mature until it hits its first year, sometimes longer. So and you will notice that once a tank gets to that age, corals will live much more easily for you. And that aging process in a reef tank is very important. But I want to see if this montipora does well, that digitata. All right, so it has been a couple hours since we added those coral. We've got a rainbow montipora right here. You can see he's happy. He's got his polyps out. Extension is great. Let me see if I can find here on the camera. This is that leather starting to open up. And see the pink pallies there. Those are the pallies that I added. They're really pretty under blue light. And we have a rose bubble tip anemone there that looks like it's starting to get happy in there, get comfortable. And we also have this little piece of digitata right there at the top. So that's just a red branching montipora species. And we have two saddleback clarkies in here. There's his buddies back there. Do you see him? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is our first reef build. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell to always get notifications of our videos. And happy reefing from Aquatic Oasis.